Hello, jet setters. I'm Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com. Right now, I'm on the island of Crete, but it's time to head up to Corfu. I'm flying what many have said is one of the best airlines in Europe. Let's see if Aegean lives up to the hype.
Aegean Airlines is a member of the Star Alliance and is the flag carrier of Greece. It's also the country's largest airline in terms of passengers carried, destinations served, and fleet size. It does not venture very far from its primary hub in Athens, though, due in part to the fact that its largest airplane is the Airbus A321. My flight today from Crete to Corfu is pretty typical for the airline. This one's a completely domestic flight of about an hour at an altitude of 36,000 feet, covering a mere 412 miles. I had to catch a taxi for the airport. The airport was incredibly busy with passengers on several low-cost flights, mostly to Germany. They were all checking in at the same time I arrived. Fortunately, though, I was early for my flight up to Corfu, which meant I was through security and check-in in plenty of time. I did end up snaking my way through the duty-free shop, which seems to be a theme at so many airports. But it was these views I was after. The airport, built as a linear structure with bus gates, provides sweeping and unobstructed views of the ramp. And there was plenty to enjoy here, but the seating, well, it was not one of them. These are not very comfortable. And there was no lounge for this domestic flight, so I stayed out here just taking in the vast amount of service and airlines that serve this airport. I was surprised to see an Austrian 777, but I suppose this is a great way to use a long-haul aircraft on a quick turn within Europe between its longer overnight flights. There's a lot of demand to come down here. For airlines, timing is key, and just as one Aegean flight departed, our inbound aircraft arrived, which meant it was time to head to my gate, or rather the doors that lead down to steps, to a holding room. The best part of being downstairs were these rare views, like this A340. But it was also exciting to see our airplane. Boarding was a fairly well-organized process, and before too long, I was getting off of the bus. Unlike many people, I really love a bus gate. It means an up-close and personal perspective on our aircraft. In this case, a 6-year-old Airbus A320. I'd booked seat 4F, a standard European business class seat, which means it's exactly like every other seat on the plane, but the middle seat is blocked. Oh, look, they're loading my bag. I decided to check it, and thankfully the cost was included since I was in business class. And speaking of booking business class, after I'd settled in, a flight attendant approached me to say I was the only person who'd booked it on this flight, so I had my choice of seats in the cabin. I was free to move anywhere.
Upgrade.
Now, let's face it, anybody who puts themselves on YouTube is by definition somewhat eccentric, and I'm proud to be in that category. One element of my eccentricity is that one of my favorite things is to see how airlines provide premium service on short-haul routes. So, here we go. Aegean puts 174 standard seats on their A320s. Each is 18 inches wide and offers 30 inches of pitch. Each seat has a light and individual air vents. There's nothing very special about any of that. But where the airline really shines, at least in my opinion, is through its crew members. But more about that once we're in the air. We began our taxi just after that Austrian 777. And then we took off and headed north. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is one of the most beautiful corners of our planet. Once we were in the air, I settled in. I'm glad to see that Aegean is still providing in-flight magazines. Unfortunately, that's been a casualty of necessary cuts at a lot of other airlines. Our flight attendant brought out a tablecloth, which was followed by a small snack. Nothing special, but really nice. And then she brought a glass of wine. All of this only minutes after our departure. It's safe to say that this level of service on 60-minute flights within the United States just does not exist anymore. The highlight of this flight was, of course, the window, complemented by the moving map displayed on screens above. We flew past many Greek islands, including Milos, to which I paid a brief visit in my last video about the Greek ferry, the Festos Palace. We also bypassed Athens at an altitude of about 36,000 feet. Now, thanks to this empty cabin, I had no problem reclining my seat. By the way, do you think it's appropriate to recline your seat? Obviously, there was no problem here because the cabin was empty, but what are your rules for yourself about when you think it's appropriate to lean back? Let me know in the comments below. Looking down on the country as we flew over, it was impossible not to think about its history. I mean, take the Venetian fortress at the entrance to the inner harbor back in Heraklion. It was first built back in the 16th century, but let's consider a more recent chapter in Greek history: aviation. Thanks to the unique island geography of Greece, air travel has been an important part of Greek transportation for a long time. The first flight in Greece occurred in 1912 when a Greek aviator whose name I'm going to try and I'm sure fail to say, Emmanuel Argyropoulos, overflew the Acropolis. Apologies to you and your family, sir. Commercial air travel began in 1930 when an airline called Icarus, which would eventually become Olympic Airlines, which is now part of Aegean, started. At its peak, Olympic served 32 destinations outside of the country and even made several appearances in James Bond films. To make a very long story short, Aegean Airlines eventually purchased Olympic in 2012. But back to the present day, where we continued our scenic flight over this fantastically beautiful country before beginning our descent into Corfu. This flight was really one of my favorites. Obviously, I enjoy long-haul flights the most, but Aegean really lived up to its reputation on this extremely short domestic hop from Crete to Corfu. And, of course, booking business class was not really necessary on such a short flight, but seeing how the airline handled such a unique offering was impressive, and having the entire cabin to myself was certainly something I will never forget. But it was the flight attendants who really made this flight special. They were kind and seemed to genuinely appreciate the fact that I was there. I'm eager to fly with Aegean again, and hopefully on a longer route next time.
I even got my own bus. Between now and the next time, see you in the sky.